Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week as always, and let me tell you, this week is crazy. If you took a shot of your favorite alcohol for every breach here, I would attend your funeral, and I would hope that it would be very nice. Now, with that, let me thank the following people that sent me a whole bunch of these, and that's David Walker, Jason Dance, Barrett Peterson, Chris Fallon, and Jacqueline Wolf. Guys, thank you so much. And if you have a tip for me, please feel free to send it to me in any which way, shape, or form, and I'm happy to give you a shout out as well. And with that, let's start with Wolf Eye Clinic, because roughly 500,000 current and former patients of basically all of their locations around the state of Iowa may have had their personal information stolen in a February 8th ransomware attack. They announced this Tuesday. I don't have any more details than that, but heads up if you're in Iowa and you use the Wolf Eye Clinic for all your optometry needs. Moving on, let's talk about the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, because they've been warning residents that their personal data may have been published after a ransomware gang published police citations online. Now here's what's going on. In earlier May, Tulsa suffered a ransomware attack that led the city to shut down its network and prevent the spread of malware. This attack disrupted Tulsa's online bill payment systems, utility billing, email, and all of that, not to mention the websites as well for the city of Tulsa, Tulsa City Council, Tulsa Police, and Tulsa 311. At the time of the attack, and I remember reporting on this a while back, it was unknown what ransomware operation was behind the attack. However, on June 22nd, the Conti ransomware gang claimed responsibility and published 18,938 of the city's files, mainly police citations and internal Word documents. So obviously this is an evolving and expanding breach. Huge problem. So heads up if you have anything to do with the city of Tulsa or you are a resident. Moving on, let's talk about NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, because according to attackers, they used a back door to make copies of data on NATO's SOA and IDM platform that is run by a company called Everest, and basically attempted to blackmail NATO. They even made jokes about handing over the stolen material to Russian intelligence. Now, the attackers who carried out the attack said that they had no idea at first that they could take advantage of a flaw in the NATO platform. Furthermore, they actually concentrated solely on Everest's corporate data in Latin America, despite NATO's announcement that it was ready to respond to a cyber attack. One of the secure NATO systems was among Everest's subsidiaries, and obviously that was surprising to the attackers. Now, after analyzing the company and discovering documents connected to drones and military defense systems, the attackers continued stealing more data from Everest's network, and they justified their actions by claiming that they were not, and I quote, for peace on earth and in the cyber world, when they basically then slowed the development of the Polaris program by virtue of hitting this infrastructure. The attackers sought a ransom of 15,000 XMR, which is a cryptocurrency, from Everest in exchange for not linking the company's identity to the LATAM Airlines data breach as well. This is a really complex one. They've also demanded that this money be given to them in exchange for not revealing any of NATO's data, which obviously we never know if they're going to honor that word or not, but NATO got hit thanks to Everest, and a whole bunch of different subsidiaries and weapons programs and everything got involved. I think we're going to see this one unfold a little more, and I will obviously keep you up to date on that one as well. Let's move on. Let's talk about Los Angeles-based DreamHost. They are one of the world's largest web hosting providers, and apparently a huge database belonging to them was leaking names, usernames, and email addresses of its customers. Now, the data wrapped up basically in this database contained 815 million records and also included information, administrator and user information for DreamPress, which is DreamHost's widely used service for WordPress websites. The data also basically appeared to date back 3 years to 2018, though it's unclear how long this database was openly accessible. And so obviously that's a huge problem. If you use DreamHost, you definitely want to check in. Moving on, I want to give you guys an update on the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. If you recall, they had a ransomware attack, and the gang was threatening to leak their data, including confidential informant data from them, and this was obviously a huge problem. Now, this leak came basically from 250 gigabytes, and that's what's going on here. They uploaded, basically, this was done by the Babic ransomware group. They started uploading this to their Onion site, and then the website Distributed denial of secrets started retrieving the data as it became available and is essentially getting it ready to act. Researchers and whoever that is requesting access to this database, and I quote Distributed Denial of Secrets, their website. In addition to the limited distribution portion of this data set, we are assembling torrents for some of the email inboxes that we converted from PST to EML. The first public torrent includes 74,874 emails from the inbox of the lead civilian analyst for the department's intelligence branch. A torrent of 17,690 emails from the director of human resources is available upon request. The Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police obviously have a serious issue on their hands, as it appears all of their internal documents are starting to go public through distributed denial of service and the dark web. Obviously a huge problem for them. Babbitt is reported to have ties to potentially Russian intelligence, so we'll see where this goes. Moving on, and what is going to make Audi and Volkswagen smile internally, even though they may not publicly say it, we are talking now about Mercedes-Benz, the luxury car maker out of Germany, because on June 11th, one of their vendors informed Mercedes-Benz that the personal information of select customers was exposed due to an insufficiently secured cloud storage instance. Now, according to the company, the breach affects some customers and potential vehicle buyers who had entered sensitive information on the Mercedes-Benz company and dealer websites between 2014 and 2017. And I quote, "No Mercedes-Benz system was compromised as a result of this incident, and at this time we have no evidence that any Mercedes-Benz files were maliciously misused." This is a common response to data breach, basically saying we can't prove it was used, so we can't prove it. Now, the vendor who notified Mercedes of the data breach basically stated that the exposed information included self-reported customer credit scores, driver's license numbers, social security numbers, credit card numbers, dates of birth. However, the company has stated that this information would not have been searchable or indexed by a typical search engine. The company released this data breach statement after reviewing almost 1.6 million unique customer records, which included names, addresses, emails, phone numbers, and some purchased vehicle information. But upon the completion of the investigation, it was determined that under 1,000 customers had their additional personal information exposed via publicly accessible cloud storage solutions by this vendor, which Mercedes did not name. So there you go. If you went shopping for Mercedes-Benz between 2014 and 2017, heads up to you. You might have got hit. Moving on, let's talk about the city of Liege. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Belgium. This is the third largest city in Belgium, interestingly enough, and a major educational hub in the country, and they just got hit by a ransomware attack, which disrupted the city's IT services and infrastructure. The website where the city had laid out this issue also provided a non-exhaustive list of services that have been impacted, including the collection of passports, driver's license, identity cards, and other important documents, the ordering of new documents, appointment services for marriage, nationalities, and others, and the availability of police support for administrative purposes. So that's obviously impacting the city very greatly. So if you live in Liege, heads up. Moving on, let's talk about healthcare giant Grupo Fleury. They are out of Brazil, and they suffered a ransomware attack that disrupted their business operations and took them offline. Now, starting on June 22nd, the Fleury website began displaying an alert warning that they had suffered basically an attack, and their systems were no longer accessible. And local media has received confirmation that the company suffered a cyber attack, but Grupo Fleury has not officially confirmed that yet, though sources are saying it's looking like the Revil ransomware gang hit them. So heads up to you if you're in Brazil and using Grupo Fleury for your healthcare needs. Moving on. Let's talk about Maximus Corp. This is a global provider of government health data services. Their data breach exposed the personal information of 334,690 Medicaid healthcare providers nationwide. Now, the company says in a statement provided to Information Security Media Group, where I'm getting this information, that on May 19th, it discovered an unauthorized party had accessed one of its applications relating to a Medicaid provider credentialing and licensing system within the Ohio Department of Medicaid between May 17th and May 19th of this year. Maximus did not supply a complete list of states that were informed of this breach, nor did the company offer details as to the type of attack. The company says it began informing the individuals affected on June 18th, along with filing formal data breach notifications with state officials. where the victims are located. So heads up to you. You may be part of this because you're on Medicaid, and so heads up, Medicaid users. Moving on, let's talk about Pakistani's largest, according to them, music streaming site known as Patari. They suffered a data breach in which its database containing personal data and login credentials of over 257,000 registered users has been leaked on English and Russian language hacker forums. Now, the exact date of the data breach remains unknown. However, the database was dumped online on June 13th of 2021. We are talking full names and usernames, email addresses, password hashes in unsalted MD5, meaning they're very easy to crack those passwords, the playlist of the users, and avatar links if you had an avatar on Patari. So heads up to you, if you use Patari out of Pakistan, you may be affected by this and want to check in. Moving on. Let's talk about Workforce West Virginia. This is West Virginia's unemployment system. They took their system offline after learning of a potential security incident, quote unquote, with the Mid-Atlantic Career Consortium Employment Services database on April 13th, according to the agency this past Tuesday. Now, the agency did not say how many individuals' personal information was possibly accessed. It said those who may have had their information exposed were indeed notified. Files were not downloaded or altered in any way, according to Workforce West Virginia. So heads up to you if you're with Workforce West Virginia or you're using them for unemployment. Moving on, let's talk about FC UK. This is a UK-based fashion brand known as French Connection, but they advertise under the acronym of FC UK. They confirmed that they were compromised by the ransomware gang Revil, and I don't have much more information at this time, but heads up to you. If, let's say, you've shopped on their website or you're employed by them, FC UK just got hit. Moving on. Let me give you an update on Scripps Health of San Diego. Now they're facing 2 class action lawsuits from plaintiffs who claim that the 5 hospital systems leaders were negligent in failing to secure patient data against data breaches. Now, each lawsuit is seeking at least $1,000 per violation and other costs. And according to a letter that Scripps Health reportedly sent to 147,267 potentially affected patients, that means that if there is a $1,000 per violation and other costs, Scripps could be basically looking at a possible $147,267,000 fine if they lose this badly, not to mention other costs. So let's call it even $150 million. It would have been much cheaper just to secure their stuff and train people. So heads up to you, if you use Scripps out of San Diego, you may be entitled to compensation sooner than later. Moving on. Let me give you guys an update on the Elekta cloud breach. As you know, a ton of health providers are essentially disclosing data breaches after their cloud platform Elekta got hit. And this week, it's Renown, which is a health provider out of Nevada. So if you're in Nevada, specifically Reno, and you use Renown, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Microsoft. Yes, Microsoft, they're once again in the news. If you didn't know, this one was kind of under the radar, but they said 2 days ago on Friday that an attacker had gained access to one of their customer service agents and then used information from them to launch hacking attempts against Microsoft customers. Now, the company said that it found a compromise during its response to hacks by a team it identifies as responsible for earlier major breaches at SolarWinds and Microsoft, meaning this is an attacker that's gone after Microsoft before and went after SolarWinds. If you recall, basically all evidence points to Russian intelligence operations through their cutouts. Now, Microsoft said that it had warned the affected customers. A copy of one of those warnings was seen by Reuters that said the attacker belonged to what Microsoft is calling the group Nobulum, and basically that they had access to this customer service agent on the second half of May. After Reuters asked about that warning, Microsoft announced the breach publicly after commenting on a broader phishing campaign that it said had compromised a small number of entities. Microsoft said it also found a breach of its own agent, who said it had limited powers. The agent could see billing, contact information, and what services the customer pays for, among other things. So heads up to you, Microsoft might be contacting you if you've contacted them for support. Moving on, I want to give you guys an update on Capture RX. If you recall, almost week to week, another medical firm is basically reporting that they were caught up in the Capture RX, who's out of Texas, their data breach. And this week, it's Tidal Health in the state of Maryland. So if you use Tidal Health, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about the Mississippi Center for Advanced Medicine. They got hit with ransomware in December of last year. It is believed to have impacted information, which may include all or a subset of the following: certain names, email addresses, phone numbers, home addresses, dates of birth, social security, information to process insurance claims, prescription information, such as prescription number, prescribing doctor, medication names and dates, medical history, as well as certain clinical services, such as whether an influenza test was ordered. So heads up to you if you're in Mississippi and you use your Center for Advanced Medicine. There you go. Moving on. Let's talk about Dovell Technologies, or Dovell Technologies, out of Virginia. Apparently, they got hit with a ransomware attack on April 24th of this year, and we don't know much more beyond that other than the fact they are claiming that names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's licenses, financial account numbers, and medical insurance information may have been caught up in this. So if you work for Dovell or Dovell Technologies, however you pronounce that, or you're a customer, you might want to check in. Moving on, and finally, and let's talk about these finalies here because there's a couple of them. We're first going to be talking about various government institutions in the Middle East and global government organizations associated with geopolitics in that region. And here's why. Researchers at Proofpoint have said that a malware variant known as LastCon was basically targeting government institutions in the Middle East and global government organizations, again, associated with geopolitics in that region. Now, LastCon has been active since at least 2011 and is believed to be operating out of the Middle East with the group's targets, including but not limited to targets in Israel and Palestine. The LastCon malware is known to target multiple industry verticals such as technology, telecommunications, financial institutions, academic institutions, military installations, media outlets, and government offices. The primary motivation of this group appears to be to collect sensitive information and documents from high-value targets to gather intelligence. Based on Proofpoint's data, the phishing campaigns occurred on a weekly basis most recently throughout 2021 before stopping in March for about 2 months and then resumed in early June with basically this continued use of this malware. And so if you're getting this, opening these files or clicking on that link, you're essentially installing this remote access into your network, and they are copying out this sensitive data. This is not the first time that we've seen this. This appears to look like it might be state-sponsored, given the information that they are going after, or either that or essentially a ransomware gang that understands the brokering value of this kind of information, selling it from one country to the other. About a year or so ago, we saw the United Arab Emirates basically be exposed for using essentially an infection called Karma on iPhones that allowed them to surveil government leaders, state leaders, even a Nobel Prize laureate. And so this could very well be state-sponsored, or we could have another country outside of the Middle East targeting them to gain insight and intelligence. We don't know who that is yet, so obviously, your speculation can run wild. I'm waiting and seeing, but obviously this is a huge problem, and we may see some very serious cyber attacks hitting the Middle East right now. So if you're watching me from that region, heads up to you. You and your governments may be under threat, and they currently apparently are, according to Proofpoint research. And with that, let's move on to another finally that we have here, and this is a big one, because it's a cybersecurity firm known as Cognite. Now, in recent news, this cybersecurity analytics firm was found to be responsible for leaving a huge database unsecured, which led to more than 5 billion records being exposed online. Now, this database could be accessed by anyone and did not require any sort of authorization or authentication. It appears to be rather ironic, though, that the database was made for the purpose of cross-checking whether the personal information of any of their clients was present in known breaches that were stored there. However, this database itself turned out to be exposed and getting them hit. Meaning, if you were a customer, they could search through this database and say, yes, we see your personal identifiable information or your passwords or whatever it is. That's what they were storing, and obviously accumulating more and more breaches, to identify these dark web hits or whatever they are. And they got their whole database exposed. So that's awesome. Now, the discovery was made by researchers at CompareAttack, who found out that the information in this leak included names, passwords, email addresses, and the original source of the leak. The data was stored on an Elasticsearch cluster, and in total, there were 5,085,132,102 records. Now, this data may or may not have been accessed by a number of third parties because there's no real way to tell, because apparently the logging wasn't where it needed to be for this kind of access. And according to their report, some of the data belonged to very high-profile data breaches, such as Zeus, Tumblr, Anti-Public, MySpace, Canva, Verification.io, iMesh, Edmodo, VK, Exploit, Master Breach Comp, Rambler, OneBib, Scentbird, Appin.com, Tundo, Wishbone, Wattpad, Mathway, Promo.com, MGM, and Estante, which is apparently a Brazilian bookshop. So if you have visited or used any of those services or sites, you may have actually been caught up in this leak, because there are 5 billion records, and obviously there are not 5 billion people using the internet right now, which means a lot of us might have been hit multiple times. If we're using any of those, that's obviously a huge thing. Also, too, because it's a cybersecurity outfit, that also kind of erodes trust and confidence in cybersecurity outfits to maintain your data. If anything, we should be the biggest tinfoil hat, the world is out to get us, organizations when it comes to data security. These are the kinds of things that really shine a bad light, obviously, on cybersecurity. Now, human error is human error. I'm not going to sit here and throw Cognite under the bus. I do hope that they get this cleaned up. I mean, we're all in this together and all of that. You know, I'm just hoping that it's a learning lesson for everybody. So those were your breaches of the week. Another crazy week. Were you infected? Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and stay private. Thanks, everyone.